When I think about resilience, it's
Mhm.
getting back up, picking yourself up, being positive, and like moving forward in your life.
But it's your environment. What's shaping you? What role models do you have?
It almost feels like you're in a competition with everyone.
I think so many times we go through life chasing an outcome. Wherever you go, there you are.
Implementing a habit to stick to was hard at first because I was like, I don't want to get out of bed and I feel like I have no structure and routine.
It's the mental game. You have to win the mental game before you win anything else. For people listening, remember where it started for you, because as J.K. Rowling said, failure was a rock bottom on which I built my greatest life.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. We're going to get right into it today because we have a very exciting guest, Colby, on the podcast today, best-selling author of The Curveball, where we're going to talk about resilience. And I know last episode we spoke about some setbacks that I've had personally about my career, about kind of like not feeling the greatest about where I was. Sam was speaking about some stuff. So was Mel, our guest. And today we're really excited to kind of deep dive into Colby's brain about resilience, how to kind of come back from a setback.
Habits, daily habits, very important, something we talk about all the time as well. And yeah, just
So-
coming back from setback. So stay tuned. We're getting right into it. And thank you in advance for watching.
All right, guys, as we said in our intro, today we have Colby on, author of The Curveball. And the premise of this episode, we want to talk about resilience. Hi, Colby. Thank you for joining us today and coming on.
We want you to kind of introduce yourself, though, before we start talking about everything we want to talk about, who you are, what you do, and all of that, just to give our audience a little bit.
Yeah, I'm the best-selling author of The Curveball. I'm a keynote speaker for companies on resilience, change management, but that's what I do. That doesn't define who I am. I'm a passionate, curious individual. I love sports, museums, creativity, traveling, and I bring a lot of that kind of into my work, and it kind of has shaped my views on many things.
And when we talk about, so if you guys are listening here, listeners, last episode, I spoke about how I was kind of, Colby, for you, if you don't know, I was going through kind of a hard time in my life. So I had quit my job, my corporate job, and I haven't been working corporate for a while. I kind of wanted a little bit of a break. That kind of put me in a little bit of a setback because I felt like a corporate job should be defining me. So I don't know, that was like a negative mindset that I had, right? So I was kind of in like a downward spiral. And when I think about resilience, it's getting back up, picking yourself up, being positive, and like moving forward in your life. So
Yes.
from where I was like 2 months ago to now, I feel like I have become a very resilient person. So this episode kind of resonates to like what my journey has been these past 2 months. So I'm really excited to get into it and kind of talk about how somebody, or for our viewers listening, if they're going through a hard time or going through a hardship, how they can bounce back and kind of just feel better about what they've been through and not feel ashamed or embarrassed, because that was something that I felt when I was like kind of on the ground and didn't feel very good about myself. So yeah, let's just get right into it.
Yeah, so I guess your thoughts on that. Like, what do you think about all that? How do you find are some practical ways for someone to shift from that negative mindset to one that's going to help them grow and be more resilient? Whether that doesn't need to mean like in her case, like, oh, I need to get a job. That's how I'm going to grow. But like, what are some practical tools and ways, like from your type of advice?
Absolutely. But before I get into the answer, I'd like to preface it by saying, friend, that's what an incredibly brave and astute call in your gut to know that environment didn't suit you. So many people are faced with that, right? Like, millennials, I'm being 30. So many people are faced with, wow, that job, it should be the be all and end all, whether it's law, whether it's any kind of legacy industry, because we've put so much emotion
So
and
true.
stock into getting that, and it feels kind of like it's being yanked away from us. But what it's actually doing is it's forcing you to look anew, to look at yourself. I believe that resiliency begins from within. And it's not just so much about getting back and rising back up again from being knocked down, as there's the Rocky saying, get knocked down 6 times, rise up 7. But it's your environment. What's shaping you? What role models do you have? How are you willing to get out of that, that noise in your head that says, idiot, what are you doing? And it wants you on the hamster wheel, and it wants you to feel perplexed and anxious and lonely and scared. So, what can I say to help your viewers face with those situations? Number
Okay.
one, you know, we have this thing called automaticity bias. We want everything to happen automatically. We want to have that career progression automatically. We want to be able to bounce away from setbacks automatically. Going through it gradually will allow you to shift your perspectives, come up with a more clearer and coherent game plan. Number two, who are you going to for advice? If it's family, a lot of times family think they know the answers. They might not know the answers. It's their projections and it's their scarcities. It depends on the situation, but it's who are you going to for advice? And number three, it's that we have an inherent locus of control. We want to be in control of our decisions up until we have to relinquish control. We're good at gaining control, but we're not so good at relinquishing control, and we have to strip that away because that will not serve us. Finally, number four, always rely on a good, solid support network. It could be your peers. When I went through my, career changes, I was a lawyer before. A lot of times I was relying on people. I still remember the coffee chats at Macmillan LLP, Brookfield Place. So many times I had people I used to rely on, but those became a solid support network, and a lot of them have moved to London, and we're catching up quite regularly.
You just said so much. I was like typing my thoughts to like what you said because I have like so many thoughts firing. Firstly, I think it was to point number one where it's like you just expect. What was the term you used?
Automaticity bias.
Automaticity.
Interesting.
Bias. Okay.
Automaticity bias.
For me personally, I also a couple years ago, I actually I quit a job to take another job that was a lot more higher paying in the same industry because I just saw the dollar signs. Like I saw dollar signs, I was like 100% going to do that. So I took that job, and it ended up that I was so miserable there and mentally exhausted, traveling all the way downtown Toronto. I don't live close to downtown. That it came to a point where I was like, I'm so burnt out that I kind of did the same thing she did, except a couple years ago, I quit without a backup plan.
Yeah.
That's not like me because I'm a control freak. Like I need to know what's coming next. So I quit without a backup plan, even though like I had responsibilities, and it was honestly one of the best things I did because through those 2 months that I didn't have like a regular sort of like 9 to 5 job, I felt like I was resilient. Like stepping away and being able to rest allowed me to like clear my mind from that like hustle culture of like go go go. So I really relate to
Was
that.
it a sales job? Was it a sales oriented job?
No, but it was client facing at like an agency.
Oh, nice.
So it's a great job. It was just not for me, and like it just taught me that like it's not all about what it seems on the outside. Like I need to like go inward and like think about what do I truly want, So stepping away really helped that. And the second thing I want to say that was interesting is or ask you about is that you said that you were a lawyer. So do you still practice law at that capacity?
No, I don't work in law anymore.
So I mean
right now but I have the training, I have the qualifications.
Interesting. Okay, if you feel comfortable talking about this, what made you kind of like leave that field and like do what you're doing now? Because again, this is me just making assumptions, but I assume it took a lot to become a lawyer. Like, how did you feel stepping away from all that work you did to get there?
Well, I mean, I'm lucky in one aspect. Like my father was also a lawyer, so I kind of saw that progression. But I also saw that he gave me that freedom to be like, if you want to practice law, practice. If you don't want to practice law, don't practice law. I'll be here to support you regardless.
That's great.
But for me personally, I was working in the pandemic, so I worked at a barrister-based firm, like litigation firm in North York, Young and Shepherd.
Okay.
Then I worked at a solicitor corporate firm, Highway 7 in Leslie. Are you guys based in Woodbridge side or Vaughan side?
We're in Richmond Hill. We're actually near Young and Shepherd right now, right? Kind of, actually, But no, so I know we're familiar with both areas you mentioned,
Yeah. So, I was working there, and I brought a client into the firm on my third day on the job, and I was really given kind of short shrift, kind of by my boss, and it was hard to bring the client in. because it means so much when you're working in that industry to bring clients in, because that is the lifeblood of that industry, of those firms. But then, fast forward to the pandemic, October 2020, I released the book, and that gave me the confidence to be like, look, I have this great training, I have this great degree, but now I think this is time to do something else that, that's much more in tune with who I am as a creative independent person.
That's really interesting because it's so weird sometimes. Like we have this like career or this goal we want for ourselves. Like I wanted to initially be an urban planner. Okay. So I was like, I want to be an urban planner. All my life, I was like, I'm going to be an urban planner. But like, obviously, I'm not in urban planning. I'm in much more of like a creative field right now. Same thing with you. Like you're doing a lot more creative stuff, right? It's just, I don't know, just an observation. It's crazy how like you think you want one thing. And then like when you really tune in, it's almost like a complete 180. And I feel like that happens for a lot of people. But I kind of want to ask about like the mental behind that. Because for some people, they don't have that support from family, friends that like, a lot of us, like we're lucky to have as well, like you with your dad. So what are your recommendations for that? Like for somebody who feels like a little bit stuck in where they are in their career or in life and they want to make that change mentally, physically, what are some of those tangible things that they could do in your opinion?
Well, one of the first things is like, getting outside of the permanence. We always feel permanence, we're kind of stuck and in the rut. And I think the more times you feel these things and you go through these very complex but very needed sometimes emotions as well, it kind of perpetuates that negative cycle, that negative thinking. So when you realize that, like, it's not permanent, it's just your reality in that instant, though, that should give it a sense of clarity that I'm not beholden to this job, as difficult as that choice may be. But sometimes we have to make a difficult choice, and it's sometimes choosing between the head and the heart.
Yeah.
The heart may say, I want to paint, or I want to write, but the head is like, no, I have a mortgage, kids to feed, etc., 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 etc.
Yeah.
That's the second thing I would say is, we're all programmed in so many different ways. So when you switch off the programming of like, I must do this, I must do this job to feed X, Y, and Z, outcome. Just be outcome independent for once. I think so many times we go through life chasing an outcome, chasing an X, chasing a Y.
Yeah.
It's that old adage, we wherever you go, there you are. I forget who said that quote, but wherever you go, there you are.
That is so weird because my spiritual coach says it to me all the time.
Really? Hey, yeah.
Wherever you go, there you are.
You should get into some spiritual coaching as well.
Spiritual mentorship.
To your point. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. And then finally, a rising tide lifts all boats. It might seem a little whimsical, but a rising tide lifts all boats. So you and your peers are in this together. You're not just one man alone or one woman alone. No matter how hard it is, especially when you're beginning your career. I think it's a lot easier, per se, when you're mid-career, later on career, but the beginning stages are the hardest. That's when you have to put the most friction, when you have to put the most time, that's when you have to put the most effort in. But it's also the time when you have the most, I'd say, ability for self-reflection and self-discovery, because resiliency does begin from within.
To that point too, like two things is like when you said that you have your peers around you and stuff like that too. Like I think a lot of people, when you're first starting your career, you're trying to make a name for yourself in whatever industry, in the society we live in right now with so much access to everyone via social media and all of that, it almost feels like you're in a competition with everyone. So you almost don't want to share like what you're going through when you want to like change careers or you're going through a hard time. And that's what we aim to do on this podcast as well, is like we want to share these things because like we're all going through it and there's so many other people that are also going through it,
Tremendously. I mean, society has never been, I think, as fragmented, as disconnected, but it's also been the most connected time in human history. We have so much access to information, to your point.
Yeah.
But what we've lost, I think, is the why. What is the real why that stirs and sparks your soul? What is the real why that animates you to do what you do? That is what we've lost And that's why, through my work and, through your work, you're doing a tremendous job. It's bringing people back to knowing their why.
Yeah, and I think like everyone always talks about goal setting and like manifesting and all of these things. And I think it goes back to what you just said about asking why. Like, don't just set a goal because it looks like a bright and shiny trophy object that you're like, okay, achieve this before you, or like whatever. Like, set your goal, then ask yourself, why do you want that goal? Like, we want to be the number one podcast and have like blah, 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 blah. But why? Because we want to be able to provide a good life for our family. But why? Keep asking yourself why, and you eventually get to all those little details. And, so I feel like,
what's been your most like audacious goal that you've thought or still in the process of seeking or going towards?
I don't think we can say it on the podcast right now. If you're thinking what I'm thinking,
it is. We'll tell you. We'll tell you after.
Offline.
We'll tell you offline because
it's a little bit secretive.
Sure. But one that we can share is like I always have this like visualization when I'm meditating. It's the same visualization, and it's me and Fran on a plane to LAX, and the plane lands, and like we're meeting with these like big podcast conglomerates, and they're like offering us a huge deal to like that sort of thing, and like it used to seem unattainable, but now like it doesn't. Like I can see us getting, maybe that's not the exact scene, but like I can definitely see us getting there, because I've realized, which we'll switch gears to this soon, is that like we've been implementing small little habits that compound over time, whether that's like just doing a podcast every 2 weeks or posting a clip every day, even though it's not every clip goes viral. Some of them do, some of them don't, but eventually we'll get there, whether it's next month, next year, 5 years.
100%. 100%. Compounding returns. Absolutely.
How about you?
Absolutely. God.
Well, I mean, you wrote a book, and like that's pretty.
Goals. What goals do I have? I mean, I want to get to sub 10% body fat.
That's hard. That's a hard one.
That is hard. Yeah. That's hard. Yeah. But
I wanna
see where that goes.
I want to talk a bit about implementing daily habits, because for me, like when I was kind of in the negative headspace, implementing a habit to stick to was hard at first, because I was like, I don't want to get out of bed and I feel like I have no structure and routine. Then, as you said in your book, like I started implementing daily habits, even if they were the smallest things, like planning out my day or gratitude journaling or doing my skincare, like an intensive skincare to make me feel good. So my question is, and this is going to, I think, range based on like the person and what their habits, they want their habits to be, but what daily habits would you recommend for building resilience? Like what habits do you feel like are ones that could actually stick and like make progress in one's life when they're trying to build that resilience?
So we have to go back to what resilience actually means. It'll be different for many different people, but it's like you're pulling a string back to go forward. So the first thing I would suggest is it's the mental game. You have to win the mental game before you win anything else. The Stoic warriors were always preparing for war, even in times of peace. That's actually really important, because it frames how you actually want to attack and achieve any sizable obstacle that stands in your way to overcome it. So the first thing I would say is, what adversity have I overcome in the past that I'm most grateful for? And that's given me the most sense of perspective throughout my journey. And that's something you can journal. That's something you can affirm to yourself. That's something you can just meditate on and think about. The second thing is really all about trying to keep your environment as clean as possible. A lot of, the environment plays an outsized impact. The third thing is, what rituals am I willing to implement? And if you look at the book, it's not so much about starting a new ritual. It's about remembering an old ritual that brought you peace, that brought you some kind of satisfaction throughout the hard times. One of my favorite rituals, again, when I was a kid, and my dad and we used to go to Starbucks, Woodbine, Highway 7, Unionville, Vaughan, Richmond Hill, and I used to get a hot chocolate. And even I do that sometimes today. If I don't want to drink or whatever, get a hot chocolate. It's going back to those romanticized times in our lives. And it's like, and to your point about the winter blues, I think that's a perfect way to beat winter blues as well.
Love that. I think to your point about the environment, that's huge for me. Like,
me too.
my environment reflects how I'm doing mentally. Like, seriously, if my room is a mess or my house is a mess, like, likely I'm going through it mentally, because it's just, I just feel like a clean space helps me be more creative and just makes me feel, just even making my bed, it just makes me feel like I did something right for the day, you
Yeah.
know?
Absolutely. Well, I love that. That's so important. Getting the smallest victories out of the way. I'd say the final thing though is prioritizing pleasure and connection.
Mm.
Become more resilient. If you look at a lot of the research coming out today, it's all about connection. We're in a time right now where we're feeling dysregulated. That's the term that a lot of the psychologists are using because of our distractions, and we're in an environment, we're faced with post-pandemic fatigue.
Yeah.
What I do though is I talk to my friends from back home every single day, and that's how I prioritize my connection.
I really like that. And I like what you said about like prioritizing pleasure and just like peace. I actually was listening to actually it was an audiobook today. And she was talking about how like our society right now, just like how we are, like I said before, it's very much hustle culture. It's go, go, go. Like someone would think resilience is like, oh, I failed at something, let me get right back up and just like go hard at the next thing. But that's not the way like you were made to work, and like that's not the way nature works. That's not the way nature, or like plants or animals work. They hibernate for a little bit, and then they get back into their mental space and then come back out for the spring. So I think that humans need to start like embodying that as well. Like, rest doesn't need to be for a whole season, but a couple days rest and then come back out of it. And I think that we've lost that, especially post pandemic.
Absolutely. We thought pandemic was going to be this kind of panacea of everyone for each other and so on and so forth, but it became totally different. And because we've had so many ancillary effects with businesses and jobs, I think it's led to a sense of burnout and a sense of deep craving for knowing something greater. And I think we've become burnt out because we've lost sight of our values.
Yeah.
Not just so much about doing those tasks that's leading to burnt out. We're becoming burnt out because we don't know what we value anymore.
Yeah, that's so true.
For people listening today in any industry, know your values first. Know what you're willing to tolerate. What kind of boundaries are you going to implement when you get to your job first thing Monday morning?
Love that piece
I
of
love
advice.
that.
I think the last thing before we wrap up is that, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. No, I was going to say, because you're a best-selling author, you have a lot going on. Clearly, obviously, you have a lot of ambition and drive, and you seem so passionate about what you do, which I love. When you feel overwhelmed with all these responsibilities, how do you kind of bring yourself back? I know we spoke about rituals and stuff, but like, can you
tangible things that you personally do,
or a setback that you've had recently that where you're like, hey, I need to kind of get back at it? What are your give us your story.
I mean, I think about where it all started for me. What was the impetus for me to write the curveball? I went through a curveball in my life, a challenging situation. Like so many people, I learned differently, so I went to go to a special school. But that moment changed everything for me. It gave me the confidence. It taught me the importance of neuroplasticity, diversity. Now it's become this thing called neurodiversity. But I was just trying to find me. I was trying to find a better way to learn, and I excelled in high school. I went to Queen's University for philosophy for 2 years, and it allowed me to excel in law school, where I graduated with honors. So I just remember where it started for me, and for people listening, remember where it started for you, because as J.K. Rowling said, failure was a rock bottom on which I built my greatest life. What I also think is important to know is that sense of perspective. For someone, the journey is here, someone the journey is there, but it doesn't matter. What matters is the effort, the discipline, and the perspective you have to keep going again and again and again. And it's not easy, but it's sometimes it's not meant to be easy.
Yeah.
I think Lao Tzu said it best: every journey begins just with the single step. Just take the single step, braving the unknown.
I also love your quotes.
Yeah,
that you're
they're
giving. Like,
no, because some people give quotes and they make no sense. You know, when they just
Yeah,
start
they-
spewing words and you're like, huh? But like
Yours are
yours are
just-
actually you can make sense of them.
they're really hitting.
They're practical.
Thank you.
Sorry, I know we said one last question, but I have one more because you talk about
Yeah.
mentorship and how important that is. I know it's a theme in the curveball. And wrapping up about like you had a supportive dad, we have supportive parents, but like I said, some people are like I was embarrassed to talk about my
Your
struggles
setback
or my setback to my family because it was very much like just go get a new job or why aren't you working yet or have you got a job yet? And I was kind of like I'm scared to almost like have a mentor because I just kind of want to internalize this. So can you just explain to the viewers if someone's struggling to maybe vocalize their struggles or their setbacks, why having that person is important, like as a mentor to guide them and like where maybe they can find that support?
Well, I mean, because it's so important because it gives that sense of clarity and like objectivity and perspective. I think a lot of times, and I've been there absolutely myself. But when we internalize and that rush to internalize, it leads to kind of shame and guilt down the line. Like I'm guilty for wanting to have these feelings,
Yeah.
and when you go through these feelings by sharing them with people we feel better about ourselves. We shift our perspectives. You know, how can people find mentors? Well, if they're not in your household, you know, look in your neighborhood.
Mm.
You know, if you're in your communities, look, maybe start a Facebook group, LinkedIn. You know, there's so many ways you can get mentorship from people that are not biologically related to you or even within your same household.
You know,
Like
I think
I think there's so much we can do to mentor each other better.
yeah.
You know, I'm a big fan of creating communities
Mhm.
that we all support each other through those communities. So start a community, start a Facebook group to look for an actual mentor. Look for someone who's not going to just give you the answer to what you want to hear.
Yeah.
I think so times it's like, yes, 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 just so you can do something else. And like, because we don't want to just constructively and be and have a disciplined view to objectively think about what this person is actually trying to say. We just think how it looks in one ear and just goes out the other. So make sure you find someone who's critically gonna evaluate and get some really good objective feedback to facilitate your support, facilitate your
I
growth.
also want to
Sorry,
say, I also think that like resources could be a good source of mentorship, like your book, for example, or YouTube videos or TED Talks or speakers, like just things that can maybe not be like a physical mentor, but can guide you.
Yeah,
I think too, like
totally.
having yes men
Totally.
around you your whole life is not going to help you grow. Like
Yeah.
that's just like feeding your ego. It's not actually going to
Yeah.
help you get to where you want to be. You're just scared if you're having people around you that are saying yes all the time. So, I appreciate that perspective, but yeah, that was
I mean, you know, it's harder when you're younger, right?
Yeah.
It's harder when you're younger. It's like, yes, men, yes, yes, yes. Because I think a lot of times we've grown up saying yes.
Yeah.
We don't say no. Like, do you want a candy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Want a teddy bear?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You're used
But
to it.
then it kind of becomes habitualized not to say yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
100%. We appreciate your perspective on all of this and resilience in general. And we're really grateful that you stayed up over there in
Yeah,
London to
thank
talk
you.
to us.
No, pleasure. Oh no, it's a pleasure.
Can you just let the viewers know where they can find you, where they can get your book and all of that information?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to get the book, you can find it on amazon.co.uk. That's just the easiest way. You can find me on social media. Instagram is Colby Sharma Official. LinkedIn, Colby Sharma. And if anything wants, you know, any kind of further information, just DM me on those websites and I'll get in touch.
Cool. We'll be sure to also link everything he said in our bio as well for easy access, guys. So take a look at our bio for the handles and where you can purchase the curveball.
And thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Colby, for coming on, and we will catch you guys next time.